Mandy, thanks for sitting down with me today. We're going to talk all about cosplay, which I'm really excited about because, as I mentioned to you, I have no idea what cosplay is all about. So let's start with when you got into it. When did you sort of develop a love for this art?
That was probably around 2014 when I started my new job. I met one of my very good friends there, and she was also into this. And we decided that we were going to attend a convention down in Indy called Indy PopCon. And we're like, hey, why don't we just work on a costume together? And it's from a show that we both love, and so we worked on it for a few months, and that was kind of like the start of where I got into it. And these conventions are kind of like, that's kind of like what they celebrate, is everyone's love for a particular show or movie or game, and a lot of people will dress up, so it's like kind of like where you go to show off what you've done.
Okay, so let's get into kind of the nitty-gritty of making these costumes, because I was looking at some of the pieces that we have sitting out and they are so elaborate. So how does the process begin?
Reference pictures. I always gather as many reference pictures as I can. If it's a character from a game, I go online. I try to find, sometimes game companies will be very generous and they will supply reference photos since they know people are going to want to make their costumes. Or sometimes I'll even go into the game and I'll take screenshots, every angle possible, so that I can see every detail, and the best way of how to construct this.
Okay, that's where you lose me, because I completely understand all of the reference photos, but how do you go about deciding what materials?
What material?
Yes, and how you're going to build literally every piece of these amazing costumes?
It really boils down to when you've kind of experimented with all the materials out there, you kind of get a feel for what feels best on your body, because there's a lot of versatile materials, but some are very heavy, some are very uncomfortable, some aren't flexible. So say for example, I want to make a giant armor costume, I know that I want it to be light because I cannot physically carry a lot of weight on my body. I made that mistake. The first armor set that I made, it was about 40 pounds of Worbla. It came out great, but it was just so very heavy, and you don't realize that when you make these costumes, yes, it may look great, but can you affix it to your body and have it stay on? Is it durable? And can you physically last an entire day while wearing it?
So how much of it is trial and error?
I'd say about 95%. I have failed a lot, and people don't see that. They see the finished product and they're like, oh, that's so amazing, but they don't see how many times that I've failed and tried again and again and again.
Tell me a little bit about your background. You said that it was when you met this friend of yours that you really got into cosplay, but before that, did you have an artistic outlet?
I've always been an artist in some form of fashion. Like, I really love drawing in general. My day job is a graphic designer. And I really like to experiment and get into new art mediums, and so I was kind of getting into sculpting and casting things, and then when I started seeing these costumes, it's like I can bring all of that together, because there's so many different pieces to a costume. You can sew, you can sculpt, you can do just about everything, and that brings it all together, and then you get to wear it and people get to see it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Do you have I guess this is a two-part question. Do you have a favorite costume that you've made, and do you have a favorite material?
In terms of costume, I have two answers for that. There's my favorite costume that's comfortable to wear, and my favorite costume that looks better. And both of those would have to be a character from the game Overwatch. And so the character is Mercy, and she's like this winged angel type character. She's like the healer in the game. She saves everyone when they're hurting. And so her main costume, she has a big armor piece and then these big giant wings that come out. And they were extremely, extremely heavy and difficult to walk around in for too long. But that was the costume that I spent a long time on and I was really proud of. And then it's not very comfortable, but that was my favorite. But the other one, it would be her Halloween costume. And that was mostly fabric that was sewn, much easier to wear. Not as detailed, but much more enjoyable to wear throughout a day.
Sure.
And your other question was what?
Materials. Yeah. Have you come across a material that it seems to be kind of multi-purpose and that you end up using a lot because it's effective?
That would definitely be EVA foam. That is a very popular material that many cosplayers start out using. It's really good for beginners. It's very flexible, versatile, cheap, and it's very light. So if you're making a big armor costume, you can have this big giant thing, but it weighs, only 10 pounds or something. And it's really easy to work with. It's sandable, paintable. So that's my favorite to work with. I also like Worbla, which is a thermoplastic material. It's made out of wood composite or something like that, and it's really versatile, and it has a lot of good uses, but it can get very heavy. So the first armor costume that I made was out of all Worbla, and that was very heavy, and that was a mistake.
So you mentioned other cosplayers and sort of using them for inspiration or reference. From what I understand, cosplay is really about community.
Yes.
So how do you get in touch with these other cosplayers, and do you all share tips and tricks and all of that?
Oh yes, definitely. The online community, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, any sort of social media, has just kind of become this wonderful tool to connect with other people. So, for example, on Instagram, I post work in progress photos, and people love seeing that because then they see your process. How did you do this when you made this? And how did you struggle? How did you succeed? And that was a really good way for me to connect. And even just going to these conventions and meeting other people, I've met a lot of really amazing, wonderfully nice, talented people just by wearing a costume, going to a convention, and talking to people. It's literally just getting out there and talking to people.
You mentioned that you like drawing. Do you draw all of your costumes before you get to work? I would feel like, especially as a graphic designer, you kind of have that mind to break it down and sketch it.
Sometimes I do. One of the armor sets I did was based on a character, but it had a little bit of my original design to it, so I drew all of that out first and made like a reference sheet. For other characters that are already pretty solid and I want to make that character, I'll just go get reference pictures. But if there's something that I can't see very well, maybe I'll sketch it out just to see kind of how I want to execute it.
So tell me a little bit about the costumes that are not an exact replica, where you do kind of take some liberties. Do you do that often?
Sometimes, yes. Like I said, the one of the first major armor costumes that I made, that was a good example of that. And it was actually a dragon, which I can't make a dragon costume, but I wanted to make a humanoid version of that. So I thought, how could I make this dragon look like armor and still appear as this character? So then I begin like looking at, pictures of the dragon, his features, and then I sketch out my own version of what I think that would look like. And it's kind of fun that way because you can kind of incorporate your own artistic design and your own ideas into something that already exists, so it kind of meshes together and it's like half original and also part of the game.
What is the hardest part of bringing these characters to life?
That's probably the planning process, where say a character has this giant weapon with a floating piece on it or something. How you have to figure out, how can I make this physically, because there are some things that you see in game that you just can't quite replicate. So how can you duplicate that as best as you can? How can you put this costume on your body to get it to stay on your body? If it sometimes there'll be fantastic designs, but they're not realistic at all. They don't pay attention to gravity at all. So you just kind of have to think about, how are you going to construct this so that it can physically exist and stay on your body, or for you to hold it, how can you make it so that it's not so heavy? So there's a lot more than just the artistic side of it. It's engineering and planning, and just there's a lot more involved to it.
When you make one of these beautiful costumes, is it like one-time use? Do you only wear it to one convention, or are you able to go to a few?
No, I definitely will wear it to a few. The ones that are more comfortable, I definitely try to wear more often. And some I've worn for several years, but then, every year I get inspiration to make a new one, and one of them gets set aside, so then I move on to the next one. But, they're all special to me. It's all art that I've been able to take out and, wear and show to other people that I'm wearing my art. So I can't get rid of them.
So you have a closet?
I do have a closet, a very full closet.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me, and I am just amazed by your work. So
thank you.
Best of luck at your next convention.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Yep.
Arts in Focus on PBS Fort Wayne is funded in part by